The use of selected yeast in winemaking establishes the difference between modern and ancient enology. Like the internal combustion engine for cars and penicillin for medicine, it marked a change in the quality of wine products. Where does selected yeast come from? Yeast has always been present on grapes, in vineyards and fermentations. The changes were the ability to isolate it, to improve it with hybridizations and genetic techniques, and then produce it in an active dry form that is easy to market and accessible to the whole wine industry. Now, if you follow me, we'll look at it from the inside of our factory. 57 years of know-how allowed us to develop a very stringent quality control that considers complying with current regulations and maintaining the desired fermentative performance. Accurate tests developed by the Research and Development Department of Aeb are adopted by our partner in the production of yeast in the wine and beer sector. This is how we manufacture the best active dry yeast as the result of constant improvement. The highest quality control is ensured by essential chemical and microbiological contaminants measurements, but also functional analysis introduced by Aeb in consideration of its final application in fermentation. These specific functional analyses best characterize active dry yeasts, defining their functions in relation to the actual and final needs of the product. The analysis of the appearance and the time it takes to foam and divide describes the behavior of the yeast in the tank and its ability to start fermenting rapidly and take dominance over the contaminant indigenous flora. The consumption of simple sugars, measured 2 hours after the rehydration of the yeast, allows us to evaluate the vitality of a preparation and measure its efficiency. If the solution keeps the initial color, it means that the yeast has fermented all the sugars available. On the contrary, the samples fail this test if they cause the failing solution to turn from blue to red, indicating the presence of residual sugars. Aeb's checks go beyond simple cell viability, considering as a minimum parameter of viable cells exactly double the cells required by the regulation. Without forgetting another analysis that is part of the Aeb process, the analysis of dead cells. To count live and dead cells, we use a counting chamber, consisting of a glass slide with a 0.1 mm deep and 5 mm wide etched chamber. On the bottom of this chamber, a grid is formed by 2 large first-order squares, also divided into 9 second-order squares, and moreover into 16 third-order squares each. While counting, the results have statistical significance if the average of the yeast cells within a square is greater than 10 and less than 60. The living cells don't absorb the methylene blue dye, remaining colorless. Dead cells, whose cell wall fixes the coloring substance, appear colored blue. In order to better investigate the real qualities of a yeast, we also set up real fermentation trials to monitor the fermentation rate and performance. To characterize an active dry yeast, knowing information such as alcohol tolerance and the ability to consume large quantities of sugar at different temperatures is essential. The samples are inoculated into bottles and kept at a constant temperature for 15 days, simulating real cellar conditions. The cells, once inoculated into the must, quickly begin to multiply, showing their robustness. On the 15th day, their ability is further tested by measuring the residual sugars in the wine. The sugar consumption allows us to evaluate the fermentative efficiency of the yeast. Fermenting on our active dry yeast means more regular and healthier fermentations. The monitor of yeast health and characterization of its fermentation performance are the two fundamental aspects of our process. The rigorous analyses carried out by Aeb guarantee excellent quality yeasts, a crucial aspect to create wines that exceed the expectations of the market.